Welcome to the Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is part 2 of the conversation with the women of Brothers and Sisters. This episode continues the conversation with Sarah Caplan, executive producer, Suzanne Geiger, UPM, Cynthia Pusheck, cinematographer, Sally Sue Beisel-Lander, first AD, Denny Dugally, production designer, Ida Henderson-Williams, production accountant, and Melina Root, costume designer. If you missed part 1, go back and listen to that part first, because we're going to jump right back into the middle of this conversation. This episode picks up where we had just started talking about sexual harassment. We also talk about pay inequality, negotiation, unions, and support systems. And there are some views about the Hollywood diversity programs that may not be popular. There's some adult language in this episode, so you have been warned. You can find us at theother50%.com, and you can also go there to buy the Other 50% swag, like the coffee cups and t-shirts. You can also find us on iTunes, Facebook, and on Twitter at Other50%, and on Instagram at Other50% Podcast. And we now have a sister podcast called The Other 50%, a herstory of tech. You can find it on iTunes or on the same website, theother50%.com. That's the podcast where I talk to successful women in all kinds of technology industries. Really interesting stuff, really great guests so far. Okay, here is the second part of the conversation with the women of Brothers and Sisters. Now, what about the less so subtle forms of sexism? Has anyone been sexually harassed on a set?
When I was starting out, yeah.
That's Sally Sue.
A director, when I was trying to get in the DGA, a director slammed me against a wall and said, I know everybody on the board at the DGA, and if you want to get in, you let me know, if you know what I mean.
Nice.
And I was like, whoa, okay. And I would say, to speak to what Sarah was just saying, it's funny because I did mention I've been fortunate enough. I worked with a female first AD for 11 years. The very first movie I worked on was a female director. I'm currently working with a female line producer, executive producer, and production supervisor. I've worked with tons of women through my entire career. But the ageism thing is tough now that I'm getting older. That's a really harsh reality that I didn't know existed. And the physical... I have noticed since I've become a first AD and I'm working on higher profile things, every single job I've been on, the DP, usually the DP, shoves me. And I think it has to do unknowingly, just to move me out of the way. It's also been some other departments, maybe grip, sometimes electric. But I think because I'm 5'2" and I'm just deemed in the way of where they want to go or what they want to say. And then combine that with the fact that often I'll say something like what Cynthia's saying, I'll have an idea and it's like, oh, no way. Turn around and someone will say the same exact idea and it's a great idea. Now, I don't know if that's sexism. I don't know if it has to do with the fact I'm a woman. I don't know.
Yes,
but those things don't really bother me in the way maybe there should, because I really see that as being their issue. And them being insecure. I don't really see it as my issue.
You can overcome it.
Would it
ever occur to you to proposition a man at work in order to gain some favor or get something?
Oh no, that is like unforgivable. I'm just talking about the physical.
Would it ever occur to you to do that to a man?
Well, it would never occur to me to go up to a man and say, smile.
This is Melina.
Honey.
Oh, I hate that. I hate that. I get it all the time and I hate it. You're so much prettier when you smile.
You're so much prettier when you smile.
What is that? Every woman has experienced it. It's like, do they think we're supposed to be decorative?
Yes.
As we're...
Apparently.
What was funny working on this last show I worked on, which was set in 1970. This
is Cynthia.
There were so many things that would happen on the page that you just like, wow, we're not that far from that, of, hey, honey, give me a cup of coffee, and honey, you should smile, and the pats on the butt, and I don't think some of that physicality stuff is as bad as it was when I started, where I lean down and pick up a mag case and have the second unit DP go, nice ass, and pat me on the ass, and things like that. You're like,
nice.
Okay, not appropriate, but it wasn't. It was more that you just had to try to avoid it, or I eventually dealt with it with him. But you're seeing the stuff set in 1970 go, well, when I started in the industry in the mid-'80s, that was still going on. Mm-hmm. So we're not that far removed.
It's still happening. I mean, it just happened on our show.
Melina.
I mean, I don't think there's a single costumer who hasn't been sexually harassed.
Well, hello, really? I grabbed them by the pussy.
Yeah.
Like,
well, but see, yeah.
But at least now there's more, usually there's more support. There's more from producers at studio. No one
now we have sexual harassment meetings, and now you can go to HR and complain about it.
But it's
now
really difficult. All it's really, those meetings are to protect the studio. It's about shaving off the liability.
That was Sarah.
True.
Right. Does it change behavior, do you think?
Not really. I mean, I don't know, because we haven't had did it change his behavior? It kind of did, I think.
You can cut this out later, but I'm sharing it with you guys now. On Revenge, our first season of sexual harassment meeting,
Cynthia.
A guy in the way back, and I think it was someone from construction, yelled out near halfway through the meeting, "This is just another example of the pussification of society."
Oh, God.
And every producer in the room went, whoop.
Wow.
I was like, I don't think he's getting what this meeting is about.
So how'd they deal with that?
I don't know, but you saw every producer, everybody, because everybody's at these meetings.
Yeah.
But he yelled out that in the back of the room. We were like, yeah, I think it's good to have these meetings, because a lot of people don't get it.
Wow.
Can I actually leave that in?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we've done that.
None of us will ever work again. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's an anonymous group.
An anonymous group of women who ratted out
Amazon
everybody.
series, The Coven.
Suzanne, it looked like one of you were talking or wanting to.
I would say today, I think it's a little less. I mean, the kind of humor we used to have on set in the 80s and 90s, I mean, the 90s, and I wasn't in the 80s, but in the 90s, and even the early 2000s, people tend to correct themselves a little bit more, but maybe that's because they're also sharing that stuff via tweets and text instead. I don't know, so it's not verbal. But I also say, when you say have you experienced sexism, I guess I probably have, but I've always responded with sarcasm or humor to try and diffuse it immediately, and that sort of disempowers it. So if someone who is under the age of 80 says honey, I would always call them sweet cheeks. Or, you would use, like, if someone was to try and give you a massage, I'd go, hey, you're touching me? Nobody touches me. I mean, but you do it with a dripping sarcasm or a humor, and it's less, it can diffuse the situation. So I think for me that always worked. I don't know if it works for everyone, but as a result, I don't feel like I've ever experienced sort of that real power trip sexism, because, you're able to sort of like, not gonna work.
No, but it's true. Even if someone shoves me on set out of the way,
Sally.
I'll often joke and say, they'll then ask me for something, and I go, not if you touch me again. And they'll go, what? Oh, what was I doing? Like, completely unaware of it. And if you bring their attention to something they're doing that bothers you in a joking, comfortable way, 9 times out of 10, they'll never do it again, because they were, one, unaware of it and unaware that it bothered you. And you've made a statement of, don't do this again. I am aware of it. It does bother me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is not a table of victims. I'm getting the feeling.
No.
And the only other area I think that is bad for women is, I'm pretty sure that any woman blind negotiating gets less money than men.
And that's Sarah.
Yes.
Yes.
You know why? Because women don't ask. Men will ask for money, and women will feel like they're paid enough. I also find that's the case. So I always say, look, if you don't ask, you don't get. And you need to ask. You need to say, I deserve more. And I'm probably guilty of it also.
Do you, since you guys are hiring people, do you coach women? Have you wink at them? Ask me for a little more?
No, because we pay scale on television.
Yeah. There's
Generally pay the
negotiating.
scale, but for people like, say, Melina and Denny, we pay more. They get more. They get a quote, and then they get more for each time. They should, in theory, get more for each time. But then you suddenly find yourself at a network that says we don't pay that, and then you're like,
You start at the bottom.
Start at the bottom again. And I'm pretty sure that the men get paid more. And in movies, I can cite a situation. I was doing a movie, and a woman production designer was asking for it was about $1,000 bump on her last quote, and they said, we can't, we can't make this deal. We just can't pay her that much. And it wasn't even that much. It's because she'd done a lot of independent things and she hadn't gotten a higher, she started much lower. And women started at much lower rates than men. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, and she had an art director who'd become a production designer who I happen to know had just done a movie at the same studio. And he hasn't done very much. And he's wasn't particularly great. She was kind of a great and noted production designer. So I said to the studio guy, I said, well, how much did you pay this guy on that show? And they go, oh, we paid that. It was the same amount that she was asking. And I said, well, okay, get his resume, look at her resume, and tell me where is the problem exactly in this money. And they went, oh, yeah, okay, we'll pay her that money.
But you had to point it out.
But you have to point it out.
Yeah.
And then another time, in a very big negotiation for a very big women's star, the whole thing had stalled. And I said, well, what is the problem? And they said, well, she's asking for $8 million, and we've never paid a woman this is a big studio. We've never paid a woman $8 million.
How many men have you paid $8,
So
$10, $20
then I
million?
said, well, they had a movie out with Dan Aykroyd. And I said, how much was that guy? Well, how much was he? He wasn't starring, it was a co-starring part on a movie that was neither here, it wasn't a big movie or anything. And they said, 11 million. And I said, well, why don't you put down the phone, run and make this deal, because it sounds pretty good to me. You're getting a really big star for 8 million. And so they did make the deal, but they kerfuffled for so long the whole thing fell apart later on for something else. But it was like, and all these actresses who are now finding out through these emails and stuff, I think the reason is because when they negotiate their very first deals, they get much less money than men. And in pilots, these new young men stars, as against these young women stars, get so much more money. They have less experience, less anything. They still command, and from that they build and build and build, and the women are left building from another town. They're still trying to get into the stratosphere with them.
And that's true across all business. Women start out not negotiating their very first job, and then you never catch up.
Yeah.
Well, and as a person who's trying to grow up another step right now currently, do you think having an agent helps or doesn't help at all? No, you don't think so.
It doesn't help.
Not in my case.
You think you still get less even though the agent's they're not helping you
I
be
just did
equal?
a show where the male DP got paid more, and the show was about women having equality in the workplace. So.
Shut up.
How'd you find that out?
Because when he left, I asked him, and he wouldn't tell me. And the argument, and this is what Sarah's saying, though, is the argument is, oh, I've been doing it longer, or I have more credit, or agents, good for him, his agent negotiated more, or he was on the show first. All of those things are true.
Right.
So I just think it's got to be, the producers have to make a decision to have pay equity between, if it's two DPs, if it's actors, there has to be some decision for equality in the way you pay.
Well, I think
Otherwise,
agents,
there's just so many ways that it can vary.
It can become uneven, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and I think agents have the same prejudice that the rest of the world does.
That's Ida Lee.
Well, the agents know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they know
all
the truth.
the agents know about what's going on. It's kind of interesting that I think that women should try and fight it somehow. I'm not quite sure how. I think about it a lot because it annoys me a lot.
Well, that's honestly why I asked him, and it wasn't to go back and renegotiate my rate because I felt like that's a done deal. It was more like, okay, so next season, or it was more just we have to educate ourselves too, and just even if he wouldn't actually tell me the rate, he said, "Oh yeah, I'm making more than you." So I think that's.
Oh, so
asking.
he didn't tell you the amount; he just confirmed he made more.
And whether that's saying what's going with the actresses right now, and the male actors saying, "I'm going to always share what I get with my female leads," because I think we all have to ask and tell.
Yeah, well, you should also talk to people like Sarah and I, because we know what particular shows pay. I mean, there's kind of a standard across all the networks on what they're going to pay a DP on a series.
I mean, we're only talking a few $100s a week. It's not major amount. It's just it's more the point of it.
Yeah.
Well, it's
That's
important
Especially
because,
since
you
you're
know,
doing the same job.
Same
Exactly.
job,
Yeah.
exactly.
and it's
I think it
perceived
comes-
value.
It is. You feel disrespected if you don't get that.
But
And
also,
they look at you
the
like-
other thing about
Yeah.
DPs though is you're fortunate in a way because you're still on you still have an hourly basic rate, so you're negotiating from that. But people like costume designers and production designers are not on the hourly rate, and it can end up that the costume supervisors earn more money than
They usually do.
they're not taking any of the risk.
Yeah.
And the same in production design. It's so there's a weird disjunct, and it's always been a male province. I'll say about being a DP until recently, but that kind of protects you, but it's also damns you to servitude in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I started in the theater, and in theater contracts,
Melina.
everything is favored nations. So a lighting designer will make the same amount of money as a set designer, will make the same amount as a costume designer. When you get to Broadway, things differentiate in numbers of sets, numbers of costumes, whether it's a straight play, whether it's a musical. If you're doing a black box with a ton of costumes, the costume designer makes more money. If it's 2 costumes and very elaborate scenic work, or there's a kind of negotiation and an acceptance of people have different kinds of work. But I mean, I can be on a show where same set over and over again, I do new costumes every week, and I get paid half of what the production designer makes. So it isn't about the amount of work or the quality of the work, I think.
And the other problem is when you're negotiating, if you have 2 offers, you'll always do better because you can walk away. And there is nothing like being able to walk away from a deal.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And the men always seem to threaten it in a way that you think, oh, they're going to walk away from the deal.
That's something I'm horrible at.
Yeah, it's hard because you
It's
don't
hard
have the
because I'm usually grateful to have the job,
Yeah.
and they know it, and so I work for scale always.
Yeah.
Right, we got to play harder to get.
Well, I mean, in my profession, it's hard because it's 80% women. So, how do you deal with, and I mean, you talk about sexism, but, I feel like it's systemic in my particular profession.
Well, is your
So-
category even paid less because it's a female-dominated
Yeah.
category?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so your whole I see.
Because
whole
her-
category.
she doesn't have an hourly rate as a I mean, that would have been better for them
Yeah.
if they'd had.
But you
because
don't
they-
have an hourly?
No.
Is it
No.
a weekly?
Weekly.
Well,
And
these days with
they're-
labor law, how
the
does that
DPs
even
are
work?
kind of on, they're on a kind of episodic rate, but it's calculated off of quite a high hourly rate, and then on top of that they get this thing. So these people don't have that.
I mean, the other thing that's interesting is in hair and makeup. Now, the makeup departments were normally started by men. I mean, the male makeup artists make more money than hairstylists
Because of Max Factor?
because of
They were
Lon
mostly men,
Chaney.
yeah.
Because of Lon Chaney. And, specialty makeup, special effects makeup, they have a much higher rate.
Interesting.
And the lowest paid hairdresser is the highest paid costumer. So one hairdresser, is making a lot more money than most costumers. I mean, they have worse hours because they have to get there in a pre-call. So I could see that happening. But when you look at those 3 categories, hair, makeup, and wardrobe, and I mean, it's staggering to me how different the rates are. When I see some costumer driving around town for $21 an hour, you're like,
And it's
I
hard.
really hard work.
Yeah.
In their own car, getting 30 cents a mile because their union negotiated less than the national average.
Yeah, but what's the fourth grip getting an hour?
Well, I mean, this is, I've sort of long campaigned for all the costume unions to be one union. But I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, when I go to New York, I have to work. I can't even work in my own local. Otherwise, I don't get health insurance. So there's the complication of, you work in LA and then you go to New York, because we're a global business now. But I have to, even though I belong to both unions, you can't cross over your health insurance.
Oh, that's just dumb.
Yeah.
And DPs can. DPs
Yeah,
can work
we're
in
not-
yeah,
they're in the
we're
600,
nationwide.
they can work
Yeah,
nationwide.
we're not in a nationwide union.
That's, wow, I didn't
Really
know
only
that.
two so far, editors and
You'd think at
cinematographers.
this
That's
point
it.
they should all be
You
nationwide.
would.
Well, I mean, I just feel like all the costume unions, New York, LA, everywhere should combine.
To be stronger
Yeah.
for negotiating for,
Okay, then we talked a long time about the separate unions on the separate coasts, and it got fairly insider, so I cut that part out. But basically what they were saying is if you work in Los Angeles, your pension, your union hours, your healthcare all goes into one union fund. But then if you go and work in a different state, you have to start over with a new local union, and all of that isn't combined. So you really lose out on having continuity of your healthcare and your pension and your hours and everything like that, because all the unions are so disparate and spread all over, instead of having one national union that covers everybody no matter where they worked. Okay, moving on. Okay, what do you think the next steps are for women? What other next steps are there for women in the business if we're going for parity?
I would like to see the DGA, only because that's my union, educate from a very early age, because I get very frustrated when I go to the DGA meetings and I hear everybody screaming, we need more women directors, we need more women directors. And you don't just make a woman director, you have to learn how to be a good director. And unfortunately, there are some women out there who direct and haven't been properly educated in it, and maybe aren't the best, but they work all the time because they're the female director that gets hired. And I don't think that's a good thing to put forth. I don't think that's a proper representation of the talent that we possess. I don't think it's fair to hire someone just because they're a female. I think it's fair to hire someone because they're really good at their job. And I think a better tack to take would be catch people when they're young. Film is an industry that is for the privileged. You either go to film school, or you're able to not work for an income for a long time, or you get in some way that usually is through a way of privilege. So why not go to schools where kids don't have that privilege and teach them about film? Why not go into inner city schools and try to give them this as an option? Why not try to have foster kids who are in the foster system come and intern on set and figure out if that's something that interests them? Or catch people when they're early on and create really talented people in this industry, as opposed to just deem a quota and then fill it.
What do you think about the studio's diversity programs?
I think that speaks to a lot of how I feel about that. I think they're not set up properly.
I love some of the things you're saying. This new committee we have at the ASC is trying to do a lot of that, because the American Society of Cinematographers is a very honorary organization that gets people at the end or halfway in their careers and we're trying to say we need to reach out more and donating, helping out places like the mobile film classroom that goes into inner city schools, and showing people that there are other options for career paths when they're not privileged. And also, whether it's helping those coming up the ranks to keep encouraging that there is room for you to move up, there is room to become a producer, become a director, and encouraging women up the ranks. And doing a lot of that outreach is a big part of what we're trying to do with this new committee. And I think you're right, you see it all the time where it's like they want to fill a quota and they're bringing in people who aren't ready yet. And it doesn't help them because they don't do the best job.
Now, what about the argument that, everyone's on fire right now about what Kathleen Kennedy said? A man can come out of his one independent film and direct a $100 million movie, and no one's saying, oh, he's not trained enough or he doesn't have enough experience, but we have a higher threshold for what women have to do before they can do that job.
I don't think that man's ready to do that $100 million movie. So, I come at from my perspective might be a little different, because if someone comes to direct something and they aren't experienced, I end up doing their job for them, or Cynthia does their job for them. We pick up the slack and we make that happen. And so there's a lot of times you just want to work with someone who is intelligent and knows what they want and actually lets you do their job because they're doing theirs. And So my answer to that would be, I don't think that man's ready for that.
But they do get the job, is what
They
she's
do.
saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they also have a posse of other men supporting them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we don't normally have that.
And also
develop our
women,
posses.
sometimes when you promote women, I've promoted women, and the first thing they say is, I can't do that.
Yes.
And I say, well, I can't hear you.
Yes, that's probably one of the only arguments we've gotten in, is when I told you I wasn't ready to be a first, and you said, no man would ever say that to me. I'm going to hang up, and you're going to call me back in a day and tell me you want this job.
No, it's typical. Women will wait till they have 11 of the 10
Yes.
qualifications, and men, if they have half of one, they'll say, throw me in.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I love listening to your podcast, because when I heard how little you had, how you just jumped right in being first accountant, and then you only did that twice,
She's talking to Ida Lee right now.
I was like, right on. Because I'm always waiting until everybody says, okay, you should have bumped up like 5 years ago.
Bet you are the undeniable expert.
Exactly.
Before you take the lead.
And then Sarah deems that. I don't think that's a female thing, but I guess maybe it is.
No, I
just think it's
it
an
is a female
insecurity
So
thing.
a guy, if he's offered something, he'll figure it out.
Yeah.
He'll go on. Okay, great.
As a camera assistant, I used to see that. It's like, do you know how to do underwater? Oh, absolutely. And then you'd see him running down the next day to learn it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a woman be like, yes, I do or I don't. They would,
Yeah.
They're
afraid.
honest
And
about
I've done what you've said with a number of women where they don't think they're ready, and you have to keep pushing them and encouraging. But it's this fear that if we fail, we represent women behind us. And so we don't want to fail, because not only will we look bad, but we represent. And especially for cinematographers,
Yeah.
you do represent the next generation coming up. And so, but I think it's something we're too cautious about.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's like if a female-directed film fails, we can't greenlight another one for 25 years.
Yeah.
Or how about if they take Ghostbusters and don't change it and put an all-female cast and then blame it on the fact it was a female cast? Maybe it wasn't time to make her that movie.
Seems like a setup.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the script.
No, but I also find you're right, because I had a second AD just recently that we wanted to promote to first, and I had in-depth sit-down conversations with her about how this is the best place to move up. We will totally support you. This is the place where you get a mulligan, because we are all behind you. And she wouldn't take the job. She just didn't feel like she was ready. And she left to do another show as a key second. And you're like, you have to be willing to say fuck it and ride the horse in the direction it's going, you know?
But you have to have a woman, like I had Sarah say to me, say fuck it. But you said you tried with her, so maybe...
I did. And even the guy, the first AD who had hired her on the other project, said you're an idiot not to move up on the show you're on right now.
Yeah, I wonder when she'll be ready.
Well, that's it.
know.
I also had my husband and my family telling me, Sarah's right. You're an idiot. Do this. So maybe it's
time.
maybe it's having a family. Maybe it's having more than just the workplace support. Maybe it's having a societal support.
No, I don't think she had the personal support.
Yeah, maybe that's
Yeah.
the difference. Because my husband couldn't have been more supportive during that time and was totally in cahoots with Sarah.
But again, that's part of the situation.
Yeah.
Because we're looking for, I have to have support in the workplace. I have
Yeah.
to have support at home.
You want all the boxes
Men don't
checked.
think that
Yeah.
way. Men jump
They have
in.
women supporting them.
Well, and they let
Yeah.
their support system, their family, adapt around them.
Yes.
And sometimes I think that's what we have to do as well. We just have to, I'm diving in. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take this opportunity. If it doesn't work out, you can always go back. That's what I say to the people I'm bringing up. You can always step back. You're very good at what you do. Taking a step forward is going to make you less good at what you were doing. Just give it a shot.
To speak to what Cynthia's saying, if you fail, you feel like that might be your last shot. Like maybe it's because we are offered less work. Maybe it's because, I don't know, but there's a tremendous amount of pressure to succeed at every job.
Yeah, that's true.
Perhaps self-imposed, but perhaps not.
But then I always say, think of all of the people that you know who are doing your job who are not even one iota as qualified as you are.
Yeah.
They're working. Why do you think you're not going to work? You will work.
Yeah. That's
I think
Yeah.
there's something great about building your allies too.
Yes.
And that's what I've been really trying to push for some people. Because sometimes women, it's like the competition. And this event we had, which was so great, with all these women, they were like, I had no idea there were this many women shooting and operating and assistant. And it was like, these are your allies. And we now have gotten to a groundswell that we need to use each other and help each other and not feel like this is competition.
Absolutely.
And have those allies that you can call and say, I got this job offer and I'm afraid to do it. And that person saying, you've got the experience in helping each other to push past that.
Super key. The amount of times I've texted you, Suzanne Geiger, in like the middle of the night, and I'm thinking, oh my God, she's all the way in Atlanta, and I'm waking her up, and I'll have some question of like, what's the rule on this? Because I want to sound like I know what I'm talking about, and I don't know who else to call. And you've never not texted me right back. You've always right there, no matter what time of night. And you're right, having that network of people. And it's tough because there's organizations like Women in Film, but I feel like a lot of times, and I use that as a poor example, I know nothing about women in film, but I will say in my experience, some of those organizations are women who aren't working because they're the only ones who have time to go to these things. I have yet to figure out how to get all of us together other than a podcast to be able to talk and say, hey, I don't want to just milk you for a job, Sarah, but I want to know when you were faced with this, how did you deal with it? And what should I do? Or, hey, Cynthia, do you think your agent really helps or do you think they don't? And,
or when a VP says this to me.
Right, what does this mean? But it's just to be able to sit and talk. Like I keep saying I'm going to have some kind of cocktail party or something, but it's so hard because we have kids and we have work and I don't know how you do that, but that's what I think we need. I really do.
I baked a cake. It's waking me
Only you would host a podcast and bake a
Well,
cake.
you know, I think a quilting circle. We could discuss this over a quilting
That's what I'm saying. We need a time. And I think if you did it enough, if you did it on like the first Sunday of every month and you did it long enough, eventually people would come and go and you would finally get the base you need. But I don't quite know how to organize that because I'm too busy.
Even if it is just texting or knowing you have people that you can count, that's really important.
Yes.
And being willing to say, I don't know. Being willing to say, I tell other accountants coming up all the time, I'm like, that you have a hive of people who have faced this before. So just be willing to say, I don't know, can somebody help me? Mm-hmm. And they do. And our Facebook page has been helpful for that with accountants, is people can put an issue or a problem. Even sometimes like, guys, I'm swamped. I don't have time to look this up. Does somebody just know this and can help me?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it too, is like, that's fabulous that you call Suzanne, that you ask, that you're willing to, all of us, they can't know it all. We cannot know it all.
No, and having a network is important.
I think you're absolutely right. And I'm actually in a Lean In Circle. Sheryl Sandberg wrote that book, Lean In, and that started this organization called Lean In Circles. And there's a whole organization behind it where you can start your own circle, and there's a lot of education things around it, but just having that structure and a monthly meeting or a quarterly meeting where you meet with your people and have the support and have someone to talk to, and then in between times you have your whole network of how to reach out and how to do it. I think it's so important. Yeah, it is the quilting bees that we've lost.
Yeah.
Yep.
We had a really interesting thing.
That's Denny.
15, almost 20 years ago now, where in the Art Directors Guild, a bunch of the women production designers and art directors got together and had brunch one Sunday a month. And the whole reason we started it was just to start a dialogue with each other, to find out what kind of experiences people were having, what producers were sexually harassing people, what to ask for regarding pay. It was fantastic. It was such a great thing. And it was so successful that we ended up overthrowing the leadership of the guild. And we got rid of some old-time guys that were just not doing anything for us. And it was a super, super successful thing that we did. And just the camaraderie and knowing that I was going to be sitting with women that I respected and that were doing the same thing I was in different circumstances was so brilliant. And I what you're saying, Sally Sue, would be wonderful if there was a way that we could do that. And because this group in particular, we're not all doing the same job. And so there are other things that we can get from each other that we wouldn't get otherwise. I think it would be fantastic if there was a way we could do that. But we all have such busy lives, and it's so difficult to make that happen. And we're all now spread out across the country, and we didn't used to be before.
But you know what? This is your group, and you have each other's
could Skype
emails.
No, it's true. And we totally could.
Yeah. I had one more thing when you were talking about how do people get in.
Yeah.
You know, I think about that a lot when I'm in Atlanta, because I'm in a majority black town, and I'm on a majority white crew. And it's like, why is this like this? It shouldn't be. It should reflect the demographics of the city that we're in. And it kind of bothers me. But then I realized, like, because I'm in a white right-to-work state, it's even easier to get people into the union because they can dip in and out of those positions until they can start working permanently. I'm watching, like, with the camera guys, like, you'll have someone on set who's a stand-in who starts befriending the camera guys, and then someday when I need an additional utility, like, or he'll come observe, you know, they're like, can so-and-so come in and observe for a day? And he'll observe for weeks on end, and then eventually he gets hired as a utility. So it's sort of like that. It's people who get in are the people who are hiring the people they know. So it's almost like the person who's the African American or the female stand-in has to feel comfortable making those moves too, to the camera guys or the costume department or the grips or the electricians. Like, I want to do your job, and can I watch you do it, and how do I get in? And it's maybe a comfort level thing where the white male is more comfortable making those overtures than the female, you know, because
Totally.
I'm watching it happen. And especially, like, you think, it's so easy to get into 479 in Atlanta. You just have to sign up. Any moron can go join the union in Atlanta and be on the list and be sent out. But there's so many African Americans and people in that community that aren't even aware of it. So how do you make them aware that they can become that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I have
It's
a customer who was my PA. Somehow she got into the LA union, and then she called me up about 6 months ago. She goes, I'm moving to New York. Can you give me any advice? I said, well, go sign up for, you know, the wardrobe union, and you'll be able to transfer your membership. That's exactly what she did. She signed up, and she's, I mean, the transfer was so easy. I have a PA that I've been trying to get into the union for 2 years here. I can't figure it out. I can't figure out why I can't get the LA PA in, and the New York union just took this woman instantly. You just go pay money and sign up.
I think one thing that is hard is getting your crew to look like society when your grip, electric, and camera, everyone hires. So I always try to really say, I want to have a diverse crew. And you have to push, and you don't always win, but if every time there's day calls, every time you're always pushing when they're showing you a list of people that they're going to bring in for, it's like, well, I don't see any women on that list, or I don't see any, you know, people of color, and you always have to keep pushing. But I think it almost has to come from the top of encouraging your crew. Like, look for somebody if there's somebody that would be really great to bring in as a utility or to shadow. But it takes a lot of work to try.
But on my show we have sorry to interrupt you. We have we ended up with, we changed our DP, and we have black DP, and or African American, and so this season he picked his crew. So now I have a black electric crew essentially, and I have two black camera operators. I have a dolly grip that's black. I have a bunch, and I have so many more people than I've ever had before.
Which proves that they're out there.
Yeah.
They're out there and they're good.
And they're good.
I don't have any straight white men in my department.
Shocking.
It's killing me.
Well, the new term is conscious inclusion, and I think that's what it is. Beyond diversity, beyond unconscious gender bias, is conscious inclusion, and that's what you're talking about. Like, be conscious when you're hiring. Who's on the list? Who are you bringing in? That's the way.
It's also conscious on what we put on camera. I'm
Yep.
constantly in meetings saying, doctors can be female, policemen can be female. You know, you need to put the women in the positions of responsibility, and the stunt utility and the stunt, you know, person can be female, because everyone is sort of like, oh, it's a doctor, give me 4 guys and 1 woman. You're like, no, it should be 50-50, you know.
Yeah, we do that, and we also for our show is set in West Covina, so we follow the ethnic mix West Covina when we call extras.
That's great.
It's great. Unlike the original 90210.
Yeah.
I'll remember. Okay, so tell me, what is your fondest memory of Brothers and Sisters?
Single memory?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, the very best one.
I think the day I had a very, I had some bad numbers when I was first pregnant, and I had to do a CVS with Amelia, which was very, it was very stressful. And I remember getting a phone call from the doctor with the results and outside the stage, and walking into the stage, and I was so overwhelmed with relief that I walked into the middle of a rehearsal in the Walker dining room, and I was crying, and I was smiling. I said, I'm going to have a girl, and she's okay.
I think I
remember that.
I think
totally
I have a
remember
picture
that.
of that. I think I have a picture
I
of
totally remember that.
That was, it was so, everybody was so loving and wonderful and excited at that moment that it was a safe place to have that emotion too.
Yeah. Well, I remember one that I have is Sally Sue. You filled in for Suzanne.
You're going to steal my memory, aren't you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, but it was great. It was like I got to feel like I could contribute too, because I work with the UPM obviously on deals and contracts and rates and all that stuff, and Sally Sue came in and we went through everything. We got to spend good time together, and I felt very needed and appreciated, and like I was contributing as well. So that was I enjoyed that time.
And on the tails of that, I will say my favorite memory was when Sarah said, Suzanne's going to have a baby and you're going to be the UPM, and I want you to come to a budget meeting. And it was you, Sarah, and myself, and Ida Lee, and John Diner, and we all sat down and went through everything, and I just felt so supported, and so I didn't feel stress at all. It was really crazy to feel that loved and that great, and that's probably one of my favorite memories in my whole career.
That's so nice.
Good things happen when I leave.
Right? When you have children, that's partly your favorite memory too.
I don't know if this is one memory as much as the fact that I always remember the amazing Christmas bowling parties. They were just, and everybody brought their kids and their family, and it was just, I always have this warm, little fuzzy feeling about how much everyone liked each other and got along. It was just, so I just remember those.
And it didn't matter, Sally Field would be there with bowling shoes on, Harrison Ford would be eating French fries at the hot dog bar. It didn't matter who you were, everybody was there having a great time.
And I just remember that was such a lovely little part of what the show was.
Yep.
Denny looks ready.
I'd have to say that my favorite is after a pretty intense and brutal first season, second season rolled around, and one of the first sets that we got to build was a restaurant set. It was Jar that we had originally shot at. And we instead built it on stage. And what we did is we went from, 5 days in and 3 days out, to pretty much 8 days in and 1 day out in the schedule, which meant that we were building absolutely everything. And what that meant to me was that Sarah and Suzanne and everybody, all the producers, had enough confidence in myself and my crew from the art department that they knew that we could build it. All they had to do was write it, and we could build it. And that was one of my favorite things in Brothers and Sisters, because it was that turning point of really feeling like we were being trusted. And we ran with it and had the best time. And supported by all the other departments as well. So that was probably the best part of all of it for me.
That's great. Yeah. Sarah, do you have one?
I just had a really good time on the show personally. So that was really a fun period for me. And also, I think one of the interesting things was saying to Matt Reese that he should direct and making him direct, and then driving around in the van with him. And then the actors were quite difficult, and they weren't that accommodating to him, even though he was one of them, and they loved him. So he when we tell him all these stories about how, this is what we deal with here and this is what we do this, and he's going, really? Because I can't believe that. And then he did a fantastic job, and now, and then we gave him another episode, and I think those kind of things that was really a fun coming together, and everybody supported because the crew really loved him too. Mm-hmm. And it was a very nice experience to see someone be able to grow on and do that, even though he was a guy.
That's okay, I guess.
Well, I had a complicated time with the actors on that show, and I was also the third costume designer, the third wife. So I had a real uphill battle winning their trust and confidence, which I don't think I ever did really, but I did manage to get them dressed and in front of the camera for 2.5 years. And I remember when I had almost entirely done comedies. And when I went in to interview, it was right after the writer's strike, and I had changed agencies. And the agent put me up for it, and I said, I'd like to do an hour long. I don't want to do this show. Please go in. You've been asked for. So he was a new agent, so I went in, and I met Sarah. So I was like, she's never going to hire me. And Sarah said, well, you have a resume full of comedy. It's so easy to get pigeonholed in this town. And I thought that was one of the most profound things anybody had ever said to me in Hollywood. That somebody recognized that. And somebody could recognize that you can also do drama if you've done comedy. So that was my favorite moment.
That's great.
Am I allowed to have a second?
I guess.
My other favorite moment is in the day and age of everybody posting on Facebook and sending emails and getting on their little soapbox and yelling and screaming, when Sarah Caplan looked at us and said, if you guys really want to go campaign for Obama, let's just go. And a bunch of us went, and we drove to Vegas together, and we went door to door and campaigned for Obama. And I know you're not supposed to do that, so I don't even know if I'm supposed, because you're not supposed to do political things when you're at work. But I loved that we were a group of people who worked together that many hours a day and still chose to spend our weekend together doing something, actually getting up off our asses and doing something to make a difference and something beyond just work. I thought that's one of my favorite life memories too.
Yeah, that was really
amazing.
Really great.
Did you guys do one of those It Gets Better videos?
Yeah.
That was happening around the
Yep.
same time, wasn't it?
We did that. We did a lot of great.
Oh, I've got a favorite moment, which is an African-American director, which is kind of unusual, and it was Obama's inauguration. And so, we had it so that we had a call time. It was quite early, but before the inauguration, we decided we would stop shooting and serve breakfast. And everybody came in evening wear. The grips and the electricians were in tuxedos. You wore a long dress. She wore a gown. We all came totally dressed up. And we sat in this weird room and had a screen, and we watched Obama being inaugurated. It was so fantastic.
Oh, how great.
Yeah.
And it was amazing that we had Michael, the director.
He was great.
Oh, it was funny. And then we had a little girl that was a black extra girl, and she was sitting like this, and her mom was there. And we were like, I don't know why we had hardly any extras. There was some weird little thing, and she was just sitting there watching the screen.
Was everyone just weeping?
Yes,
we were.
Well, because we had worked so hard. I mean, we campaigned a lot against Prop 8 and also for Obama, and we had all really banded together and worked hard that year.
That was bittersweet.
That part was bittersweet, yeah.
Yeah.
But to actually not just talk about it and go out and do something was really important.
It's wonderful. I want to work with you guys.
We were lucky.
Thank you so much for doing this. This was really
Thank
fun.
you.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, A Herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I would like to thank my incredible guests, Sarah Caplan, Suzanne Geiger, Cynthia Pusheck, Sally Sue Beisel-Lander, Denny Dugally, Ida Lee Henderson-Williams, and Melina Root. Thank you all for telling your stories and for sharing this conversation with me. And honestly, for your candor. I'd also like to thank Jonathan Lucas for editing, Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, and on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features, bios of our guests, pictures, and the merch. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at Other50% and Instagram at Other50% Podcast. And be sure to check out our sister podcast, The Other 50%, A Herstory of Tech, talking to the women in technology fields. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
All right, that's a
Try to
wrap.
ignore the